So what is a constructor? A constructor is a special function that we specifically use to create objects. And when we are creating it, we want to also initialize them. You might think it is like when a baby is born, like they don't come with any empty things, like they still have some abilities. And you also can also give them their names, they have IDs and so on. And then they can do other actions. But when you're just born as a baby, you still have some attributes like your name and also some abilities like you can, I don't know. Of course, a baby cannot crawl, but at least you can sleep and eat and so on. So this is, again, but the thing is, now what we want to do is when we create an object, how we would like to happen, what's its default values. So this is what we want to do. Or when we want to initialize this, like we have attributes, like we say that, okay, I want to create a rectangle. And a rectangle, well, I don't know what's its width and what's its height. So when I want to create it, at the time of creation, I want to say, okay, I want a rectangle with 5 centimeters height and 10 centimeters width. So what should those values should be? Well, I can of course set it after I create it. I can change it, but also there's a way that when I'm creating it, okay, I want to set these values. So basically, these are special functions that we only use to create objects. And why is that special? Well, for instance, they are not void, and they don't return any data type. And they can be used only and only to create a data object. And another important aspect of them is, if your class name is my class, then your constructor should definitely have exactly the same name. You cannot say that, okay, this is my constructor or so. You cannot give a different name. It has to be with the class name. And well, we can say public or private. We'll see that later on. This is how accessible it should be. But as you can see that it's not void. It's not data type. And then for the parameter type parts, well, again, it can be anything. It can be anything that based on our needs. And for a class, well, we can have more than one constructor. So what does it mean, or why do we might need it? Well, you might create one constructor that doesn't take any parameter, and you just say, okay, by default it should be this. Like when I say a rectangle, okay, sets it width and height. You might say, okay, set it to 5, or maybe you don't want to initialize it. That's your default rectangle. But you might want to say, okay, but I want to create a rectangle based on my needs. I want to specify the width or height. So then you can also do it in that way. So you might need for your for the problem that you are working on, you might need multiple constructors. But here's the thing: for each constructor, you have to have a different signature, which means that you should have different parameters. So you cannot have multiple constructors that doesn't take any parameter. No, then it would be ambiguity from a Java perspective, because it says, okay, what should I run? Like, this doesn't take any parameter, this doesn't take any parameter, they have the same name. Okay, then what should we run it? So again, from that perspective, they should be always also unique. And the constructor that doesn't take any parameter, it also calls default constructor. What does it mean is, well, if you don't create it, Java will create it for you. What does it mean is, like, let me actually show it from the Eclipse part. So let's go to our Eclipse again. And let's look at this part. And we have the student object here, as you can see. But let's look at what is our student object. So when we look at this, okay, these are attributes. These are getters and setters. This is also getter and setter. And these are just some functions that we defined, but we don't have a constructor. But then the question is, okay, we don't have a constructor, but how can I run this? How can I create a student object here? I didn't define any constructor. Well, this is because if you don't define any constructor, okay, this part is important. I really emphasize that any constructor, then Java will, for you, define automatically will say, okay, Okay, our developer forgot to define a constructor, so I will do it for you. And what is this? It is this, which is it doesn't take any parameter and its content is empty. But this is put automatically. Why do I say that it is automatically, and why do I say that it is done if you don't define any function? Well, you could also say that, okay, I want to define a function. First let me show this. When I save this and when I go to here again, there will be nothing changed because if you put it, okay, Java will not put it for you. But if you don't put it, Java will put it for you. But let's say, okay, I want to create a constructor in which I would like to set it like name and maybe for a GPA. And then, well, you can of course now set it here, like you can say name should be, this name should be this name, the parameter 1. And also this, that GPA, the GPA of this class should be GPA that I defined. So when I do it, well, what I did, I didn't set it, save it yet. But when I save it, what will happen is, okay, when I go to here, now I'm getting an error. As you can see that now here, this is this red warning here, there's this red underline. This means that, okay, there's an error. What happened now? I didn't touch this part. I just set it there, I just changed it. The thing, what happened here is, now Java is saying me that, okay, you don't have any constructor that doesn't take any parameter. This is what Java is saying. Well, the reason is that because when I created my own constructor that takes a parameter, now this default constructor is deactivated, which means now Java is not anymore inserting this default constructor for me. That's why now Java is saying, okay, you don't have any constructor that takes no parameter. So in order to handle this problem, well, I should literally also define a constructor that doesn't take any parameter. So, and then of course, you can fill it as you wish. Like if you want to say, okay, if a student, I would want to say, okay, no name, and for the GPA, it should be 0. Like this is my default student. And then when I save it, now, when I go back to that class, yeah, now there's no any more problem because now I have a constructor that doesn't take any parameter. All right, any questions so far? Then let's proceed. So here is again one example, and here is our rectangle, and here we have this width and length attributes, and now we define first this default constructor that doesn't take any parameter and its content is completely empty, and here we have also another one that takes parameters for the width and length, and then we set it, and the rest are sorry. Create, can you say it again, please?
To start to create a function.
Yes.
What is the first step I should do?
That's a very good question. First, we should think about it. What are our parameters and what are the functions that we can do? Like, you might really put yourself in that object. Like, okay, let's say I'm a student. All right, I want to create a student object. Then think about, okay, I'm a student. Then what do I need? What do I have as a student? Name, ID, GPA, a list of courses that I'm taking, the department that I'm in, maybe which year I'm in, my expected graduation, and so on and so on. So what are, of course, for your goals, this is needed. Like, what are your cases? And also, again, now, then you can just turn it into attributes. And then the next step is, okay, as a student, what can I do? Like, I can take classes, I can withdraw classes, I can enroll in sections, I can view my transcript, and so on and so. Maybe, so what are the behaviors, what are the actions that I can do? Then these will be my actually functions that I need to define. And then actually I'm done. Then I just need to implement this idea now. It's really like a design option. Like for a rectangle, you might think, okay, for a rectangle, what do we need? Like it's a 2D object. it should have a width 2D object. It's not 3D, so it has only width and length, height. So then, yeah, that might be my attributes. Then, what might I need as a functions? Like instead of in addition to getters and setters, well, you might say, okay, what about the probably you will need to use this area and so on and so. So what are the functions actions that you might need for a rectangle? Of course, this might sound funny, but you can say, okay, what would I do if I was a rectangle? Yeah, you might think it in this way. Okay, so then you can start to think of what functions that you might need. But it really needs that kind of a thinking process. Yes, please.
You don't put static when you define the function.
Yes. That's a very good question. Actually, I have a meme for this, but it was in the in the following slides. First, yeah, we don't need to put static in every functions and in every methods, but we will see it. Like we really need to be actually more careful about it when to put the static or not. It changes the meaning, but I'll talk about it when we come to that point. So it's pretty normal that, yeah, what is the static that we didn't see it yet.
Can you return to the rectangle example?
Excuse me?
Can you return to the rectangle?
Sure, yeah.
Why did you put two constructors? I didn't understand.
Why didn't we, what is that?
Why did you put two constructors?
Two constructor, yeah. One of them doesn't take any parameter. It's like the default one. The other one takes a parameter. So again, by the first one, I can just say rectangle R a new rectangle. So I can just create it and then change its width and length later on. And in the other one, if I just want to create it at once, set the width and length. It really depends on our needs. Like I cannot say that, okay, we have to do it without saying where I will use this rectangle class. But if you need to create rectangles first and then decide their width and length later on, then you need this first one. But if you don't need it, but if you just say, okay, I don't need it, I should set the width and length at the time of creation of that rectangle, then I need the second one. So it really depends on your needs. It's not like mandatory that you should always have this and so. All right. And now this variable, actually we had talked about it in the previous lecture, but basically and again in our code also we have this. So we will use this. So it sounds kind of a repetitive, but yeah, this is a keyword, and it basically means that when we are creating it, it refers to the class that we are defining, and it is usually used to solve the name conflicting parts. Like if you use the same name here, and then if you have an else attribute name, and then it would mean like a weird phrases like name is equal to name. What does it mean? So what you want to say is that, okay, name of this class, again, we had this also here in our student part. I have this name here, and I also have this name here. Then if I had said this name is equal to name, that sounds pretty weird. But what I'm trying to say is that name of this class should be equal to the name and that parameter. But you might say, okay, why are we having this weird cases? Like instead of having it, couldn't I say that like this is n instead of name? Well, yeah, that would solve actually the problem. You could also say it in this way. Then that would be exactly the same thing. But the main thing here is for a variable naming case, like we should always give the meaningful names to the variables. Then n as well, it's not that. What is it? If we capitalize n, well, we don't want to do it. Do you remember why? Like, because we use these capitals for the constants. Like again, this is again a convention. Like you can of course always do it from a technical perspective. It's not a requirement, but in programming we are really traditionalist, which means like we really want to follow what others do, because we don't want to unnecessarily increase our, like I could also say this name, okay, for instance, this is name and this is name, all right? Yes, that, and then you could also say this without need any of this keyword. This is fine, but what you are suggesting, what you are saying also that, like the other software developers will start to think, okay, this name should be constant because it's all upper cases. They will think that you thought it as a constant, but you are not doing it. So this would just cause some unnecessary confusion. So that's why we don't want to do it. And you can also say this, like the first letter. If it is that, if we do that, yeah, that's also one way. But then again, from programming convention, if the first letter is capital, it means that it's a class. That's why we don't want to do that also. So again, it's if you are defining a parameter, it's good to keep them everything lower for the variables. But then, yeah, you will end up with this naming difference. That's why, I mean, it's if you don't want to come up with a good name, like I don't know, for the game, maybe you could say ism, maybe, or you can use a combination of Arabic and English to come up with a good name. Yeah, that sounds okay. Maybe, but again, at the end of the day, the rule is you need a really good name, semantically meaningful name for the variables. And if you are not if you are not able to come up with two different meaningful names, then okay, this is name, and then I just want to say this name is that name. So this is what we can do. Yes, please. Oh yeah, we have it. Yes, I'll show it, and yeah, then we will hand. Yeah, I just want you to show this meme. That again, war is war. This is where we end up, like a kind of a funny situation about this because of this kind of a case. All right, yeah, it's 5:26. I think it's better to stop here so that you will have enough time for the quiz.